Right, player ratings. We are looking at Better Call Saul, season number 4. Jer and Joe are here. And let us remind ourselves what happened in this season.
You've been selling drop phones on the street?
There you go.
You do your thing, I'll do mine. Jimmy, come on, what does that mean? Don't worry. I've been taking on some pro bono work. I like it. I'm good at it.
In order for our arrangement to continue, there is a matter we need to discuss.
Nacho, Varga.
I know what you've done. The Salamancas do not. From now on, you are mine.
The Salamanca family.
Yo soy Eduardo, but you can call me Lalo.
What are you doing here?
I'm just here to lend a helping hand, make sure the business is running in order.
And you're Gustavo Fring. I've been an admirer of yours for many years. I come here on behalf of my entire family to give you our deepest thanks.
Well, for what?
For what? For saving Don Hector's life. So you pick up 6 keys a week?
Yeah.
Where?
He's got a chicken farm way out of town.
Ex parte communication, contempt of courts. I mean, we're talking about a couple hundred counts of mail fraud. I could have wrecked you at Schweiker. I could have boned me, too. Don't worry. No one's gonna know about it. It'd be like it never happened. Let's do it again.
Gustavo Fring.
La sigla.
The German national, in the middle of Albuquerque, pouring hundreds of tons of concrete at a secret underground location. The man we're working for is very serious. Think about what happens if something goes wrong. I'm looking for a Werner Ziegler. Has he been in here in the last few hours?
Yeah, he was here.
Is this Werner?
Yes. Who is this?
Michael, is that you? When I found him, he was on the phone with an interested party pretending to be one of your guys. You have any idea who it was?
I do.
I'm not gonna be practicing under the name McGill, so.
Shouldn't be a problem. Just down the hall, we have all the floors.
Great. Hey,
Wait, Jimmy, what?
it's all good, man.
Welcome to the game, Saul Goodman. Lads, you're very welcome once again. Season 4, this is what this is. It's a transition of Jimmy McGill to Saul Goodman. Joe, we might start with you. Is this a step up from what we've seen before, or is it just another consistent season of brilliance?
When you're asking us to step up, it's certainly a ratcheting up of the excitement and the drugs and the guns and exactly what you expected the story about the cartel to be. There's less legal procedural stuff, although the Mesa Verde thing, eventually you kind of like, really spending a lot of time with the bankers here. Can we get back to the drug lords and the cartel people and Gus and what's happening there and how Saul becomes Saul? And ultimately, you've got to be pretty fulfilled at the end, where Saul is Saul, Mike is Mike, and the transformation of Rhea and her character to somebody who actually really likes the dark side more than working for the bank. Yeah, this is a winning season.
I'm not sure if I agree with everything you said there, which we'll come to in just a moment. Joe, what did you reckon from season 4?
Yeah, no, I really liked it. It's a bit of a moving season. You're kind of freed up from the main story that we've been following through the first 3 series of kind of this brotherly spat. So, like Jared's saying, you can kind of expand, you flesh out the whole cartel side. That gets a lot more interesting. So in terms of thinking about it as the kind of first step in the kind of second 3 series arc that they're doing, bringing in a lot more humor as well, I think it's like the best kind of mix of the sort of, can get a bit bogged down in legal stuff, but it's got kind of, for me, more interesting cartel storyline going on and a bit more crack as well.
I think so. I see season 4 as an example of unbelievable character development, and we may as well just start with that and get straight into the player ratings rather, because there's a lot of these players / characters that have transformed over the course of the season. The point I actually disagree with you most on, Ger, is around Kim Wexler, who we'll get to in just a moment, but we have to start with Jimmy McGill. So, like, before I started Better Call Saul, I didn't want to watch Better Call Saul. I think all of us were big Breaking Bad fans, but I wasn't a big Saul Goodman fan. I wasn't I didn't feel that he deserved a spin-off. I certainly didn't feel he deserved a prequel. I was kind of disinterested in where Saul Goodman came from. When I saw that he got his own show, I was like, nah, fair enough. Should have given it to one of the gangsters and made them one of the central characters of this. So I wasn't that interested at the start. However, once I saw the high ratings of Better Call Saul and eventually hopped on the bandwagon and eventually was a sheep and followed everybody watching the show, I became charmed by Jimmy McGill. I started saying things to myself like, I've got this all wrong. Maybe if I went back and watched Breaking Bad again, I would feel far more close to Saul Goodman. I would have a lot more appreciation for his charm and his wit and how much I love the character, because this is what Jimmy McGill is. But I was wrong about that as well. I was wrong about the fact that Saul Goodman is that character. What that actually is Jimmy McGill. The charming character we see is early Better Call Saul Jimmy McGill. It is season 1, season 2, season 3 Jimmy McGill, where he's witty, where he's funny, where the audience really like him. In season 4, he becomes Saul Goodman, and by extension, he becomes a dick and he becomes unlikable.
How much of a dick is he though? Give me the bits where he's a dick.
The very end, what we just heard at the end, using his brother as a mechanism to get his job back as a lawyer, to get readmission to his career. That is the work of a dick.
So you like the guy who was the con man who used to befriend people and talk about making wolf noises while having sex, and then use that as an opportunity to steal their what? You thought that guy was superior, and who also perpetrated insurance fraud by slipping Jimmy. That guy was superior to the guy who's playing the legal system, who won't let him back because his brother was a dick. I mean, I just want to establish the moral compass that we're working off here.
No, but I think there's a hugely different tone. I think there is I think there's a vastly different tone to those two things you're talking about. Like in this series, you have him being again a dick to Kim Wexler when he doesn't get it the first time, and they have that argument on the top of the car park where, you know, he kind of says that she would just love to disown him, for example. Like, that's a really horrible scene, and like she covers herself in loads of glory. By the way, I should say I'm giving Jimmy McGill a 10 out of 10 scoreline. I haven't given out a 10 on all, because I feel this strongly about it, because at the start of this television show I really liked him and I was really enamored by the character and I thought he was hilarious and funny. And now it's all come full circle where I'm like, right, this is the guy I didn't want to have a spin-off television show about him, because he's actually just not a nice character. To be able to do that within one series, one season, I think is just phenomenal television writing, and I'm giving him a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You can almost take for granted just like the level this is all operating on and how well this is all put together. But just going back to your point there a second ago about him kind of, you thinking he crossed the line in that court scene, I'm kind of with Jer here. I didn't get that. I was like, this is just another, it's like he doesn't respect their rules. He's going to go in and take the piss and manipulate them and get his way. We'll probably come back to that scene a bit later on. But yeah, it's just, it is, there's an interesting clip I saw, which was around the time season 4 came out. It was Bob talking about a very similar thing to what you're saying there. Bob Odenkirk saying that he really enjoys playing Jimmy, and he felt apprehensive about playing Saul, and he didn't know what the writing was going to be for seasons 5 and 6. So he was saying he was like feeling a bit uneasy about how they're going to make that transition. But yeah, it's just like you said, character development in this series is just pretty sensational.
I think he's right. So without giving anything away, there are definitely bits later on where you're like, what is the motivation here? Because it's almost like he's coaching himself to be Saul as we happen here. But this happened so naturally and brilliantly that I think it was absolutely taking a scenario where you have been cheated, and he was cheated. He should have got his license back. He was cheated because they thought he was insincere about his brother. He would have been insincere if he said he'd loved his brother, because you know, he's riven with guilt about his own role in his brother's suicide. But like, one of the reasons I love The Wire is that David Simon gave this interview very early on where he talked about how it's all actually, this is a Greek tragedy where everybody in the whole thing is fucked. Like everybody in every layer, if it's the drug slingers, the people investigating them, the media investigating them, the politicians who keep the whole thing together, that everybody doesn't know it yet, but actually it all ends badly for all of them. And when you think about that as a means of looking at other things like this, then Jimmy, I think, is beginning to wake up to that whole sense that he will be screwed forever if he always plays by the rules. But go in, put on a smile, put on a show, and you come out the other side of it. Like he talked his way out of the desert in the first season with Tuco Salamanca. He put on an act. Yes, I'm an FBI guy. No, I'm not an FBI guy. Like that ability to turn around, that was Saul Goodman right there. And we see the birth of Saul Goodman properly. Or maybe maybe this isn't the birth, but like this is the kind of the chrysalis ending in the court scene, and I think that's sensational.
I think
well,
sorry, go on, Joe.
Just on a bit of this whole kind of theme that to go in, just a bit of kind of foreshadowing. I love the scene. It's like not the most important scene, but when he goes in, when the early episodes, it's a job interview, and they offer him the job, and he's like, "You morons, you guys."
Yeah, like I think that there is a very thin line between Slip and Jimmy and Saul Goodman. No, like I think Slip and Jimmy is the guy who talks his way out of the situation. There was a roguery about it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the whole point. It is
I
that
think
kind of
darker.
There's no. Yeah.
Like, sorry, we didn't catch that, Joe, but I was just making a point that there's a darker undertone.
There's no Slip and Jimmy, and there's no line between Slip and Jimmy and James McGill. Though they're exactly the same person. There's just like I will put this part of my character in abeyance, but it's always there. And I think the darker undertone with Saul Goodman is that he's going to end up working for the cartel. Like, but if the legal system's going to work, everybody needs a lawyer. Like. I mean, the whole point of the legal system is that justice is blind. She holds the scales and she's blind. She can't see what's on them. Like the cartel guys are entitled to their legal representation too, right?
See, so season 4, true. That's very true. Season 4, and also he gets pulled into that. Spoiler for season 5, obviously. Season 4 starts with Chuck's death and with Jimmy finding out about Chuck's death. And we didn't quite know what sort of impact this would have on him. Can we be judgmental about the way Jimmy grieves his brother? Because I almost feel guilty saying he becomes a dickhead more in this season. He's clearly a suffering man who is just expressing and experiencing grief in a very different way to how we normally associate grief being shown.
Yeah, it's kind of another example of one of those things that's kind of put on the back burner in the series, but it's actually really complicated because, like, on a surface level, he gets over so quickly, but then we have this kind of letter lingering, and then obviously Chuck is central to the climax of his whole story in the series. But yeah, it's a good point about. I don't necessarily look at it in the context of a guy who's grieving. I kind of feel like he's a bit liberated just by not having his brother there and just all the tension and baggage that came with it.
Interesting.
For his own sake.
I definitely feel like the grief is there in loads of different ways, and he hasn't dealt with it at all across this. And I think the Howard subplots, where Howard also feels guilty, and I think Howard definitely had a role to play, so should feel some guilt. How Jimmy interacts with him is just kind of it is slightly weird, and for me, it's a little bit unresolved. I'm also interested in where's the money for the old folks home case. What that's just kind of out there at some point in the future. He'll get it. It's like, I'm kind of surprised that there's been no sense of that money coming through, and it disappeared. That storyline disappeared totally, to the point where it's almost like it's on the shelf for something far down the line to come back to. And I felt like the grief was a bit unresolved, and I felt like that money question was a bit unresolved here as well.
Like very obviously unresolved is what I would say about the grief. I would say it is the single biggest motivating factor towards Jimmy McGill becoming Saul Goodman. That is my theory on it, that this is a guy who is harboring a lot of inner demons right now, has not dealt with this grief, and it transforms his character, transforms his disposition. He's not as funny as he used to be. This is not the writers getting less funny. The writers are actually getting better as this thing goes on. And you talk about the opening scene, the opening couple of episodes in the desert. That is hilarious. That's absolutely hilarious. They could knock this out of the ballpark. week in, week out with some of the lines that they can give to Jimmy McGill, and they decide not to do so in season 4. This is a complete shift. Like just on the old folks stuff, it's a really good point. Like, I think the only real mention of any of Jimmy's old Sandpiper friends is the fact that Geraldine actually dies. Now, I know she wasn't Sandpiper, was she? She was the woman in the ad, and he almost grieves her death more than he grieves the death of his own brother, which I think hammers it home a bit further. So I'm going for a 10 out of 10 for Jimmy McGill. What are you guys going for?
Yeah, I've gone on a very high 9, just leaving a bit of ceiling there just in case.
And 9.5 is what I'm hearing there.
Yeah, we got 9.5.
Sure.
Yeah, I got 9.5 too because I'm up to speed and I think that there's a bit more range to come.
All right. Okay. That's good. That's very, very exciting. Kim Wexler. I'm giving Kim a 9. And Jerry, your point was about Kim perhaps being this wavering thing. I just want to get into the point that I disagree with you about first. I'm confused about her motivation for helping Jimmy McGill out in terms of some of his underhanded lawyering techniques during season 4. I think her motivation is actually to help out her grieving partner. I think she is laying down and allowing Jimmy to have free reign on everything, any way they want to point that moral compass. His brother just died. We can point it that way. Let's go and do it. That clip we just heard earlier on, I want to do it. I want to keep doing this. This is for Jimmy, in my opinion. That's where I disagree with you.
I think she likes it. I think it was her idea to have the letter writing campaign. Jimmy was going to, so Hugh gets arrested for assaulting the cop. I mean, there's a great little subtext there to the American justice system. The cop was not assaulted, and Hugh does not deserve to go to prison for 5 years for that incident where he's Jimmy's security guard and he sees somebody trying to take his phone. So he did exactly what he was supposed to do. But the American justice system is so screwed up that this man of color against this white cop is going to end up going to prison for 5 years. So there's a great little kind of like, this is how, that's kind of constantly threaded through. But they could have got him out by smearing the cop. That was Jimmy's off the top of his head plan. But the genius of the plan that Kim Wexler comes up with is, again, it's comic relief, but she instigates that. She also indulges all of the ideas that he has. And I think that I think Kim likes being a little bit wilder than working for the boring bank. Lets her be.
I think she's better than Jimmy quite often. I think she's actually better than him at being a con artist. I really think she's a natural at it, but I'm not sure if she feels that she needs it as much as Jimmy, or I don't think she sees it as much.
Well, she clearly doesn't. She's a brilliant lawyer, but she's a brilliant. You're right.
Sorry, but I mean in a drug sense. I mean in a buzz sense. I think Jimmy does get a thrill off it, and I think she does too. There's no question about that.
Just on a quick point there, I see what you're saying about that, and about her maybe possibly being better than it. I think that's partially why she's so kind of shook at the end when Jimmy's put on his big performance, and he's like, "Oh my God, did you see? I think I saw one asshole crying," and we've seen that she was crying, and she thought he was being serious. So it's kind of like there's levels to this, and he is sort of operating on the, this crazy level of manipulation. But on your idea that she's indulging him to make him feel better, I think there's kind of a bit of a counter to that if she actually thought what he was doing was self-destructive, she'd be stepping in to stop him from destroying himself. So I'd be more along the lines of what Jared's thinking, that she's kind of wavering a bit more towards the dark side. And it is funny because her scheme is funnier and possibly more outlandish than anything we've seen Saul do on this. Let's just get on the bus and go get some crayons and write a lot of letters.
The phones.
Yeah.
The phones are great.
Again, to come back to my favorite characters in the entire thing, the college kids, absolutely knock it out of the ballpark with the phone scene. It's a good point you make, Joe, but I wonder if she sees the only pitfall to their actions as a morally questionable thing, that she actually doesn't see this as something that could be detrimental to his well-being, detrimental to his safety, detrimental to his career. She actually feels we can get away with this, and she will indulge him, and really it's not morally right. But at the same time, it might not do any long-term damage, perhaps. I can definitely see your point. Maybe I'm wrong on that one. But the kind of change that I can see from Kim as a function of what we experience through Better Call Saul is actually, in the first couple of seasons, she is like our moral compass. She is a person who is kind of immovable at the start, wavers a little bit in the middle seasons to actually go towards the more Saul Goodman way of thinking. But I think in season 4, she becomes more than just a moral compass. She almost becomes a compass of where Jimmy's grief is at. And she is almost experiencing the grief that we feel Jimmy should be going through. She's experiencing and showing it way more outwardly. Like when we see that letter that Chuck has written to Jimmy, she's the one who gets emotional about that. And Jimmy is really cold in his response to that, cold to Howard. The reaction from Kim then, her patience must be remarkable. And I do fear about the toll that this will take down the line and how much they've kicked that can down the road. I think early in season 5, there's going to be something that might put a huge strain on that relationship.
And just something quickly just before we move on, if we are talking about this as the first series of the last 3 series, and Jared's talking about this idea of that Wire quote about sort of like the gods knowing what's going to happen, all these kind of doomed players. We know what happens to Saul, but something that's kind of been in the back of my mind, especially revisiting these series, is we've got no idea what happens to Kim. Kim's not an eye in the flash forwards. She's never in Breaking Bad. She could hypothetically be in Breaking Bad. She could hypothetically be somewhere aiding Jimmy Saul down the line. But I think, that's something I think that's going to be, as well, the fact that so she doesn't have to be this avatar anymore because we fleshed out the world. I think that's part of why the show can get more interesting, is they don't need to kind of coach us and they can allow her to be more interesting. So I think it's, giving her a 9, and definitely, I think that's something that I'm definitely going to show now, is I had presumed she wasn't going to survive in this universe, into the Breaking Bad universe, but now I'm not so sure, and I'm actually just wondering where they're going with it all.
Okay, sorry. So you think she still might make it out alive? I'm not sure. I kind of keep waiting for this shocking development where something horrible happens to Kim because she doesn't make it to Breaking Bad, or she's not in Breaking Bad. So, sorry. Now you go and spoil it all by saying something stupid like "I love you." That whole scene is about them drifting apart and their relationship going completely separate ways. And the bit where he changes his identity, where she's like, "Well, who am I? Who am I with here? Is it Saul Goodman? Are you Jimmy McGill?" I think that it is absolutely all set up for them to break up. And I assumed that that's what was going to happen at the end of this season, and that was going to be the end of her. Primarily because Eoin had told me that there was only 5 seasons, Joseph. I don't know if you know this, but I was like, "Oh, Jesus, we're heading into the last season now, lads." And then,
so
2 nights ago, I was like, "Oh, by the way, it turns out this." Yes. Oh, this is the second last episode ever. And then I was like, actually, no, there's another season. All right.
Coming next year. See, I don't Google shows that are currently airing that I'm not up to speed on, because you will see spoilers. It'll be like, is X character really dead, or something like that. And I think I've already got a spoiler for season 5. So I
think I'm basing there being a 6 series on Eoin saying it as well. So maybe that's not true. Who knows?
Jared, what are you going for? What's your rating on Kim Wexler season 4?
I'm going to give her a 9 as well. Sensational stuff.
The other point on that, just one of the observations, like her taking up pro bono cases again, and that flashback we see of Kim chatting to Chuck about nailing that big case when Jimmy just hasn't a clue what's going on. Like, she is a student of this game of law. Like, if it doesn't need to be made any more clear, like, Jimmy really doesn't love the law. He likes being a lawyer, whereas Kim really is just someone who loves this. Let's move on to Howard Hamlin. My rating for him has averaged out at around a 2 or a 3 for the first couple of seasons. But this week, season 4, I'm giving Howard Hamlin a big fat 7. And the reason why, and it's probably his least involved season, it's not because of that. It's because of his involvements being absolutely spectacular. Well, okay, spectacular is too strong. So I previously saw Howard Hamlin as a character that could be any character and still fulfill the same function, the sort of coaching, as you mentioned, Joe. I think he's always been somebody who filled a function whereby to actually illuminate the villain that Chuck was, or to illuminate the shady dealings of Jimmy McGill. He was always some bit of a foil. But actually what he does in season 4 is he helps hammer home the fact that Jimmy, to come back to this, is a dick. Like, he is a broken man, Howard. He spills his heart out to Jimmy at that, was it episode 1 or episode 2 of the season? Like, Jimmy immediately makes him regret ever doing that. We have later in the scene Jimmy giving him that pep talk in the bathroom and then in his office. Pep talk very much in inverted commas. It's unbelievably cold because Jimmy sees him as the walking embodiment of Chuck. But in turn, we see Jimmy as just somebody who has a really nasty streak to him. And I feel sorry for Howard, but by feeling sorry for him, I get a greater appreciation of Jimmy. And for that reason, I'm giving him a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm glad you finally
been on.
come around.
Yeah, welcome aboard. We were right, you were wrong. Apology accepted.
Like anybody could have slotted into the Howard Hamlin character. Like any character could have done that role for the first 2 seasons, but now only Howard can do it. And I'm all on board the HHH train. Heartbroken Howard Hamlin.
Very good. Still trying to be ashamed of those his role in the first 3 series. Not fully appreciating. I actually have him down 1 on last series. Great performance, but it's just in recognition of the fact that the tide is going out. I know we're all disappointed to get less Howard time on our screen. So just in recognition of that, I'm going for 7.
7, sure.
I think the scene at the start of the season where he arrives and is seeing the smoldering building, is that the first time we've seen him not dressed in full suit with is that the very first time we've ever seen him in, how many, 30 hours of watching this where he's not fully dressed to the nines? Look, I'm a solid 7. I think I aired and I listened to your nonsense the last time, and I took him off the high mark that I've been giving him, because I think he's actually he's a brilliant character in that he moves things along and performs loads of different roles as the straight man sometimes, as the villain at other times when actually he isn't the villain, and did it really well. So I'm happy to go back to my 7.
Just quickly mentioning his outfits, do we have an over/under on how much one of those shirt tie combos with the little metal dealy costs? I'm thinking a good like 500-600.
Oof, yeah,
in Albuquerque.
200-300 at least. Yeah, no, you're probably right. It's probably closer to half a grand or thereabouts.
Very impressive.
Yeah, the wardrobe is good. I'm a big fan of the wardrobe. Mike Ehrmantraut, we're on to him next, and like Mike's been like consistently excellent, always just kind of a level below Jimmy in our scoring. I'm going to move him up to a level score with Kim on this season and give him a 9 for the very reason that we've seen huge vulnerability from Mike Ehrmantraut in this season. That I think I mentioned this at the end of season 2, where Gus has the branch on his horn and telling him not to kill Hector Salamanca. That sort of vulnerability, the sort of lack of a bulletproof aura that can sometimes surround Mike Ehrmantraut. I think that's a really powerful thing, because ordinarily he is the Mr. Unstoppable and Mr. Reliable, and there is no way that anybody's going to fool Mike Ehrmantraut. Not in this case, and I think he's actually getting fooled by his own emotion on this case. Like we see a little bit of a breakdown when he calls Henry out in that support group during the season about lying about his wife, and then we see further weakness in his relationship with Werner Ziegler, and also like arranging a strip club outing for those Germans. A terrible idea. I'm surprised that did not end up in a worse place, but eventually he comes full circle, cops himself on, and shoots Werner Ziegler in the head despite telling him that he's not okay. This is the sort of conflict we see within Mike Ehrmantraut, the baddest of the badasses, but still showing real human signs of being a granddad and somebody who actually cares about other human beings. So a really strong season, and 9 for me.
Okay. He cops himself on and shoots him in the head was the last thing I heard from you, Eoin.
Okay.
I'm like, I mean, taking them to the strip club was exactly what they needed. They needed a little bit of R&R, and he diffuses the situation, but it's actually, what's the name of the German he shoots in the head?
Werner Ziegler.
Werner. It's Werner and his big blabby mouth that gets himself in trouble that night, because he can't help but brag about how great he is. Werner, poor Werner.
That seems brilliant. Like back at the napkins, and then we're going to build. And it's a secret. It's beautiful.
So what are we going, Mike? I've got a 9, lads. What have you got?
I've got an 8.5. Just one thing to add is just I love Mike doing fake jobs, kind of between that high tension of like his family being threatened and killing guys in the desert. There's like him going to his fake job, and like the whole kind of before it escalates, the whole dynamic of him and the Germans. So yeah, 8.5.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure why he couldn't restrain himself in the self-help group when he saw the guy lying. I kind of felt, I don't know, maybe that's all about painting different layers and giving his character a bit of texture, and falling out with his family would be the last thing I think that he wants. So I just wasn't entirely sure where that whole thing, what that was pushing at, or what they're bumping up against there. So I'm going to give him an 8. But I mean, look, the bit where he shoots him in the head is like it's properly shocking just how cold-blooded he can be in this instance.
Absolutely. Right, just 2 more main characters to wrap up. We'll do these together. I'm giving Gus Fring an 8. Like, I think he's just more. He's less of a rounded villain, or sorry, not a villain. Mike's not a villain. He's less of a rounded, cold-blooded creature than Mike Ehrmantraut is. Mike Ehrmantraut's more of a family man. Gus Fring.
Mike's a villain.
Because he's got a granddaughter, I automatically associate him with not being a villain. You know, you can catch me.
He's a henchman. Sorry, he's not a villain. He's a henchman.
Because Gus Fring, actually, I don't see very many heroic qualities in Gus Fring, or certainly very few truly positive and kind qualities in him. He's an evil man, and for that reason he kind of scores a bit lower than Mike for me. He's an 8. Do you work for me now line? The story he tells Hector about the Quati and capturing that animal and keeping it alive to torture it, and then sacking the nurse after Hector makes some slight improvements just to trap him in this sort of middle ground of him being awake but not making any further improvements. Cruel, cold, 8 out of 10. And then I've given Nacho Varga a 7. His entire season is like The Revenant. It's just constant suffering.
Yeah, I've given Gus an 8 just on pure presence and just being able to stand there on screen and just be Gus. And I'm bumping Nacho up to a 7, which, like, I think we're getting close to peak Nacho, like really fleshed out. We're kind of in this new world of kind of we're starting to get payoff. So that's up from like a 6 or 6.5, still just a 7, but he's going the right direction. So yeah, I think that whole side of the story improves a lot in this series again. But yeah, we're sticking him on a nice 7.
Sure.
Gus is a 7.5 for me, because I kind of still feel like I want to get a bit more. What's the Chilean story? How did he end up being an outsider in the cartel? Why did they allow him in? I had to Google that animal. It looks pretty gross.
Doesn't it?
A terrible, terrible story. Imagine torturing that poor animal. But it definitely illustrates a little bit for you about how there is a nasty streak with Gus. Nacho, I like Nacho. I think I've been emotionally invested in his arc from the get-go. And actually, I think that there's a point to that, like, is there a duty of care to people who work for you, even if they are working in a cartel and making money off the misery of methamphetamine addicts? From a HR perspective, there probably is.
Possibly. So that's Nacho and Gus. Just our usual very trivial mention of all the other recurring characters throughout the season. We get a quick mention of Lalo Salamanca and his introduction for the last couple of episodes. He will be a full character, getting a full rating next week here on the Play Ratings podcast. We obviously have Lionel and Marco Salamanca, the twins, who go on their killing spree through those she houses that were selling drugs. The thugs that end up upside down were a fun recurring character for a couple of episodes. As I've already mentioned, Camera Guy and Drama Girl, the 2 best characters in the entire TV show, play a blinder with the scenes with Wells' trial. And Gail is back, let's not forget, singing his song about the periodic table of elements. And then we get a flashback version of Chuck, who's fairly triumphant after sealing a case. And before we get your final thoughts, I just want to say that my favourite moment in the entire thing was Ernesto singing karaoke, absolutely killing it out of the ballpark. If it knocking it out of the ballpark, I should say. If it wasn't for Camera Guy and Drama Girl, he will be the #1 character in this television show.
Touched on already in terms of honorable mentions, just have one. Werner, big fan. Just the whole like guy in over his head ends up getting shot in desert. Sign me up. Also, a little shout out to that the Borussia Dortmund away jersey that won the German class. And also just how in the current lockdown climate, how amazing their little bunker looks with their like cabins and their private football pitch and their bar and their cinema. So yeah, thumbs up for Werner.
Fair thought for Werner's wife, who flew all the way over from Germany to get to the airport, only to be told that he's changed his mind and doesn't want to see her at the airport. That's a long flight when you're like on a promise to fly all the way from Germany, and then you get back home to Germany and it's like, actually, he's been shot in a desert.
Yeah. So Jared, if you thought that was the like dying moments of the whole series, where was your head at?
No, I knew there was one more season. I'd seen that there was, okay. But I thought that last night's episode, or this Tuesday's episode, was the second last ever. I was like, wow. Gotcha. So hence you're like waiting for somebody big to die. And maybe they did. You'll have to tune in next week to find out.
Sure will. Yeah, Werner's
Maybe.
wife, worst J1 ever. Listen, lads, thanks a million for joining us. This has been the Player Ratings Podcast. Tweet us at Off the Ball if you've got any future shouts, because we're out of Better Call Saul content this time next week. What will we move on to next? We'd also love to hear your thoughts on the Season 5 ratings and indeed the Season 4 ratings if you're catching up just like us. It's Better Call Saul Season 5 this time next week. Bye-bye for now.